We will start in a few seconds. Okay, our next speaker is Anita Döhler. Anita Döhler is CIO of Next Generation Mobile Networks Alliance. This is probably the most interesting association or the most interesting club of people to talk about what happens in the next generation of mobile networks, about 6G, because here are all the brains thinking about how 6G could look, and they look at it without restrictions, so they think free about it. It's a very nice association or alliance to join. Anita Döhler holds a diploma engineer degree in telecommunication engineering, as well as a master of business administration, and she's a systemic business coach. So please welcome Anita Döhler.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction, and maybe also to spend a few words right at start about the words which were said during the lunchtime panel. I had to dig out from the afternoon session because we had a board meeting. You can imagine that it was unfortunately something I could not defer. And but I listened to the panel, and it fully resonated with me. I mean, being a female in an industry which is still heavily male-dominated, and I personally don't have any problem as such with that. But I really also agree with what was said, that it's so important that we make it tangible for the youth, that STEM professions actually are quite interesting. And for me, it was actually the same, because my parents both are engineers, and they sent me when I was 14 to a special school dedicated to STEM professions, actually in a little town of Jena, Carl Zeiss Jena, and there I realized that I actually like it a lot, and I also like a lot of other topics in life, but that's so important. And thank you also for the kind introduction related to NGMN. I think it's worth to spend a very short time to introduce NGMN to you, to those who might not know the Alliance yet. So Next Generation Mobile Networks is the full name, and we are an alliance which was founded already back in 2006, and it is an operator-driven alliance. So we have globally more than 80 companies in NGMN, 23 operators right now, spanning from North America over Europe to Asia. Of course, we also embrace the entire value chain. We have 2 other membership levels, that's contributors and advisors, with vendors, with consultancy firms, with companies from the so-called new ecosystem, and then also advisors. Those are research institutes, and for instance, Gerhard and Frank from the Technical University of Dresden, you already heard today in panels and speeches. In 2021, we actually developed what we believe is a unique strategy for NGMN. So we work typically on requirements level. So we are not a standardization organization, and we issue requirements to the standardization organizations, but not only, we also work on very current and actual topics. Of course, everything is happening in the pre-competitive area. And we felt that actually we need to deliver value not only going forward, looking at the next generation of mobile networks, but also to the more immediate issues our industry and especially the operators do have today. And the first one we started already that time is the work on the end-to-end operating model for disaggregated networks. It also includes network automation. The second big topic is sustainability. Sustainability as such, but of course embracing also network energy efficiency and other topics. And 6G. Naturally, as a Next Generation Mobile Networks Alliance, we started to work on 6G already 3 years ago now. And Dirk, when I was invited for delivering a speech here, Dirk suggested, can I mention this? Dirk suggested as a title, 6G, the turbo for the mass market. And I reflected a bit and I decided at this moment in June 23 to better focus on other topics. So of course we work on 6G, but we are not yet there to speak about it. So why do I want to speak about sustainability? It is something which is very important right now, not only but also because the energy prices, of course. And it is spanning over 5G and 6G. So it's absolutely clear that going forward, we need to perform much more work with regards to the general measures to reduce carbon emissions in our industry. And of course, we enable other industries as well. It was also very well mentioned in another speech today already. Therefore, it's so important to start work on that, and we started in 21. So we focus mainly, so it's actually a roadmap we deliver for the industry, and we deliver this roadmap by focusing on measures which can have immediate impact, measures which require an incremental engineering, and then of course, real innovation going forward. The main topics we embrace in Green Future Networks, that's how we call the program, is of course circular economy, supply chain requirements, then measures how to generally reduce environmental impact. This goes into areas like how to reduce the use of critical materials, how to improve the eco-design of products. I just recently learned by listening to a podcast that Germany belongs to those countries globally with the biggest loss in water reserves. So in 7 years from now, it is predicted that we will get in Germany a pretty tough problem with regards to water reserves. And of course, every single household can contribute, but we need to start in the industry. Network energy efficiency and metering. I will spend more words later on that. And KPIs, how to actually benchmark and how to measure green networks. We have in NGMN also Umlaut, part of Accenture now. So Hakan shall be here this evening and tomorrow as well. And we delivered work already, so you can also download such guidance beginning of the year. Those are the topics we already released. So of course, one thing is to release documents to provide guidance, but it's much more important what we are doing by developing them. Paper is paper, but the value is in collaborating, in developing the requirements, recommendations, and guidance together, in sharing best practices. That's what we do in workshop in forms of workshops, in form of projects, and then of course to conclude on the main requirements. So just this year, we released recommendations for telco supply chain sustainability. It's the so-called Scope 3, and for operators who already fully embraced renewable energy as a source, the Scope 3 carbon emissions count for between 80 to 85%. So it is really important to look into supply chain requirements when it comes to sustainability and to to deliver a true circular economy. The second topic, KPIs and target values, I will explain later. And we will issue soon additional recommendations with regards to energy efficiency measures and also how to further reduce carbon footprint. It's also one big topic is how actually to measure carbon footprint of a service. That's something we could talk about for probably 1 hour. So when it comes to telco supply chain criteria, I strongly recommend to use a checklist. So it was developed by Best Practice Sharing. And there are also best practices mentioned by different operators and vendors. The recommendations, of course, are that it's important to embrace, to update all the processes, to have the entire organization behind the sustainability objectives. It is never only a supply chain topic. It's a topic which is relevant for the entire organization. And sorry, I go back for a moment because there was, the fourth point is actually also extremely important. What is the biggest obstacle actually? It's the availability of data and the reliability of data. And that's an area we also need to jointly work on in the industry. When it comes to KPIs, many things are already reported, but typically we don't compare apples with apples, and that's another challenge we face in the industry, and that's one reason why we provided guidance here. The team actually analyzed data from around 30 operators and developed for different categories target values, which also actually are kind of quite hands-on support in the day-to-day business by checking where your own organization actually is related to the target values. The other strong recommendation is we have environmental KPIs and we have energy KPIs. And one of the, for me personally, important conclusions was that we should not use energy efficiency KPIs in a standalone manner, but we should always link them to quality of service. And that's what also our publication explains in more detail. And yet another recommendation is that, of course, the more granular the data are and the more granular the KPIs are, the better, the higher is the comparison value. So one recommendation is, for instance, for multinational operators or operators with several operating companies to rather report based on a country level instead of consolidating everything to a group level, and probably both is needed. The topic of a general reduction of carbon emissions, I already mentioned the reduction of the use of critical materials, the ecosystem water footprint, starting really across the entire value chain from manufacturing to actually recycling or the reuse of products. And one topic we actually started 2 years ago, and we really struggle and we need support as an industry by also involving other industries, is how to calculate the end-to-end carbon footprint of service. There are some countries where it's already mandated by the regulation to inform the customer during the use of a service of how much carbon emissions actually the service is consuming. And it's just incredibly complex, and of course we should not end up in an academic exercise, but at the same time it's very important. So that's something we still have on the agenda, and we will not give up to come up with proposals here. And then of course new business models, life cycle criteria assessments are part of that. Network energy efficiency, it's a topic I think which maybe was not that high on the agenda 2 years ago, but especially last year because of the increasing prices. Fortunately, it became an even hotter topic. So there are, of course, already measures which can be applied in the network to achieve zero use of equipment at zero load. like advanced sleep modes and so on and so forth. But the question is, for instance, and I hear different opinions from different operators, is the equipment already fast enough to go back from the sleep mode? So I think there is one concern, and that's why we said it's really important to link this to the quality of service when it comes to measurements. It's really important to increase the trust in those technologies. Artificial intelligence, automation, of course, naturally will contribute to such objectives, and all those are measures which we consider rather short term. Then there is the topic of incremental engineering improvements. I think everyone in the industry is aware of that. The radio access network is the part of the network with the highest energy consumption. The base station equipment is providing half of that, so 50%. In total, radio access networks contribute with, I think, 2/3 to the energy consumption at minimum. And another 40% of the radio access network contributing to carbon footprint and energy emissions is the cooling. So advanced cooling mechanisms, immersive cooling, that's what we consider as incremental and innovative measures going forward to improve energy efficiency. There are also other topics like cutting cables or shortening cables in base station equipment to improve the transmission efficiency of energy to the radio frequency modules, moving to hardware or bus architectures when it comes to base station equipment, and also using power amplifiers, wideband power amplifiers. So there is already a lot of in the pipeline, a lot of measures and technologies which can be applied. Going forward, of course, there's something like distributed dynamic MIMO, but that's more in the long term, which will contribute to increase energy efficiency. So what are we doing now going forward? So we started further work on the topic of energy efficiency measures. We call it phase 3. And we work on circular economy. Linked to energy efficiency, we also go to coordinate the standardization of metering. That's another topic contributing. So we need to be able to measure what we consume. And there was already a recommendation a year ago that we need to move to unified metering architecture. 6G, I will just mention it shortly. I mean, naturally, energy efficiency and sustainability are major criteria going forward in the development of 6G. And that's also reflected in the vision and drivers we published and the use cases. So use cases are classified, and some of them are technology enablers and artificial intelligence, improvement of energy efficiency is part of that. Use cases are not only consumer use cases, they are also operational use cases. And we published requirements and considerations, the first high-level approach. When we developed use cases, of course, one of the biggest topics is always, can this be delivered with 5G? So what is the exact difference to 5G? And honestly, we don't know it yet. So we just had the board meeting. We are discussing with the board what are the requirements for 6G. We also need to improve operations. We need to improve efficiency. The shutdown of legacy generational technologies will also contribute to improved energy efficiency of networks. And we will go forward, of course, and continue the work, but in a pragmatic and realistic way, because, as we already mentioned also in this conference today, 5G is not even implemented, so we need to see what will be possible with 5G Advanced. And at the same time, it's completely normal and absolutely imperative that we work on the next generation already. However it will look like. You also heard a very interesting presentation from Frank today. that's just a repetition of what I said already. And yeah, the important topic is really alignment with the sustainability drivers and also delivering market novelty. So we need to really deliver value and not just a next generation of technology. And with this, I would like to close, and I'm available for any further questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions at this moment? No?
Maybe one small question. I can also shout, I agree. Thank you very much. Just in case you know it, because you were talking about measuring sustainability, and we are a test measurement company, I'm really interested in that part. Are those measurements all involving the network itself, or can you do those measurements also in some kind that you don't touch the network, that you don't change it? Like you are driving in the car, Umlaut is driving in cars and doing measurements. So did you think about, or are you planning to think about doing some sort of measurements in that direction?
It's a very good question. I don't have a direct answer on that, because I'm not that much in the details, to be very blunt here. But we do have different companies, because the entire value chain can contribute. And going forward in standardizing, we are not a standardization organization, we are coordinating it together with our cooperation partners, which are standardization organizations. But I strongly recommend to make this input. I mean, Keysight is part of NGMN. You can always suggest this. I think it's a very good suggestion. Maybe it's already embarked in the project.
The original idea is not from me, from a colleague. I just...
Okay. No other hands raised. Then thank you very much, Anita Döhler.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. And I hand over to Dirk.